This is my third time restarting this video and I really hope that I can talk because at the moment, I don't know why, I just can't talk. Hello, my name is Chloe and welcome to my January reading wrap up. So in the month of January, I did end up reading 10 books, which I'm pretty impressed with considering I believe that I am in a really big reading slump and I don't know what caused it. I don't know if it's just the start of the year and I'm like, oh, I really need to read good books and I need to try and read as much books as possible, but then I got stuck and I just didn't know what I wanted to read and it was a whole thing basically. I did end up reading 10 books. I actually started listening to books now because I feel like in the past I didn't really love audiobooks. I just felt like, not that it was cheating or anything like that, it was just like I didn't feel like I was actually reading the book, even though I was reading the book, but I was listening to it, so it just didn't. Anyways, so I listened to one of the books and then I was like, wait, I actually really enjoyed listening to that. I'm gonna listen to the second one by the same author. And then I got stuck in Spotify jail because I reached my listening hours, which I think is personally so stupid because why would you have listening hours when I'm already paying you for a subscription and then I have to pay on top of that to get more listening hours? Have a separate subscription then for audiobooks. Anyways, this is beside the point. So I got stuck in Spotify jail, so I only got through half of it. Which is why when I say 1.5, I only listened to 1.5 books, you know? And then I read physically 2.5, and then I did read 6 of the books on Kindle. And I'm really enjoying audiobooks, so I think I'm gonna really implement it whenever I'm struggling to read a book or if I have something else to do, like clean my room, because we all know I love to clean my room. As I mentioned, I feel like I was in a little bit of a slump at the start of the year, so I started off by listening to The Italian Marriage by Jenna Bianco. And this book is a fake marriage trope, which I love. I love a good fake marriage trope. So the story follows Matthew D'Adamo. I think I'm saying that right. This is how you say his name. And he must marry to inherit his family's estate. And Sarah Brown, who is an events manager, is willing to play this role of a wife to help him secure his inheritance. And the pair meet for the first time at Sydney Airport before boarding their flight to Florence in Italy. And then upon arrival, a twist emerges. And another couple is also vying for the estate and this inheritance. And then there's a challenge. So both couples must spend their year restoring a property in Italy, which is usually, I think they were both a rundown like hotel. And the most successful team will win this legacy, inheritance, estate, the whole thing. So I found this really engaging. I gave it a 3.5 stars. Matthew and Sarah were really likable characters and the plot twist did keep me hooked. There were very vibrant descriptions, like the descriptions in this book was so good. It really brought the scenery and the setting of this book to life. There was, you know, the Italian food, the picturesque countryside, to the challenges of renovating the crumbling property. This book it held my attention. It was good. And I really enjoyed listening to the audiobook because it's written in third person and there's a lot of different perspectives, and when I was reading the audiobook the voice would change, so then I'd know whose perspective I was in, whereas I feel like if I read this physically I would be so confused. So I really enjoyed listening to it, obviously. I also really liked the fact that Sarah does have endometriosis, and I know a couple people who do experience that, so it was nice to have that like included in the story and kind of how that can impact your relationships and friendships and everything like that as well. And it also includes a lot of Italian phrases, which if you didn't know, I did study Italian at uni and throughout my schooling, so it was nice to I was reading it and I'm like, wow, I actually understand this. That's kind of crazy. I gave it a 3.5 and I would recommend listening to the audiobook if you're looking just for like a nice simple romance with a little bit of plot twists and challenges and everything like that. If you're looking for something like that, highly recommend giving this one a go, but I would recommend reading it as an audiobook. Then the second book that I read was Keep Me by Carly Jean. This book I read on my Kindle and I gave it a 2.75. Yeah, okay, so this book is the third book in the RLU series that she's written, and I really enjoyed the first 2 books. I think I gave them like maybe a 3 to 4 star rating. I was really enjoying them. They were just like quick little books to get me through, and I think they were hockey. Was it hockey or baseball? I don't know. It was some sort of sports romance. it's set at college, you know the drill. And the story kind of follows this runaway princess from France called Camille, and she escapes to the United States to experience a normal life. And she takes a job with the baseball team where she falls in love with one of the characters, all while staying undercover and trying to, fly below the radar. So she's like their media team photographer. So I really loved the concept of this book. I loved the idea of the runaway princess trying to carve out her own identity and like break free from the expectation that this royalty was pushing on her. And she was a strong, independent character who wasn't afraid to take risks. Her determination made her really easy to root for. However, the premise had so much potential, but the execution of this book just fell so flat. And one of the biggest issues that I found with the book was that Camille's status as a runaway princess wasn't given much weight. It was like, it just felt like people around her were just like, oh yeah, she's just a princess, she's just running away. Like, there was nothing being like, oh my god, you're a princess. There was nothing like, it wasn't made as big of a deal as I feel like it should have been. And the stakes never truly felt really high, which made I like tension in a book. I love having that little, something to make that book more interesting. I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah. And then there was Riker, who is our male main character, and he had all the makings of the grumpy, the classic grumpy love interest, but I feel like we never got to understand him on a deeper level. He was very closed off and moody for most of the book, and his personal struggles I feel like were never really explored in the depth that I wanted them to be explored in. And it kind of just felt like he was being grumpy for the sake of being grumpy, he wasn't, I don't know, I feel like his character was just written and was like, oh, this is what a grumpy person says, so I'm gonna, I feel like if he had a real emotional arc and he had more character development, a deeper dive into his issue, he would have made a really great character, but he fell flat. Camille fell flat, and the pacing was just so off. Especially at the end, it felt like when this conflict happened, and I'm sure you can guess what the conflict is, it wasn't like this big thing. It was just like, oh my god, we need to have a conflict. Here it is, and it was just, it was just there, and the resolution felt too rushed. It wrapped up too quickly without addressing some of the other complex emotional things that they could have addressed, and I gave it a 2.75. I would not recommend this book. I don't think I'd recommend this series. I don't know if I will continue this series because I know the 4th book has come out, so I don't know if I'll read it purely based on the fact that I did not enjoy this book as much as I feel like I should. So the next book that I read was Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. This book I gave a 3.5 stars. This was a book recommended, or it was not recommended, but the Bookmark podcasts are doing a book club for the podcast, and this was the first book of the month, so that's why I read it. And I read this on my Kindle and I bought the physical copy. Would I recommend it? I don't know. Maybe. Let me tell you what it's about, and then you can decide from there. So the story follows Elwyn, who is the princess of Iramath. I think that's how you say it. And she shares this rare, powerful bond with these 5 dragons. However, under the orders of her father, King Garrick, she is forcefully separated from them because he basically fears her and the power that she has with these dragons, obviously. And she is desperate to reunite with them at any cost. So she runs away. And her opportunity comes when Commander Caden Velas, who is a feared warrior from a different kingdom, offers to help her on one condition. She must assist him in this battle against her own homeland. So, with no other choice, Elwyn's like, yes, I will do it. As a protagonist, I really enjoyed Elwyn. So many fantasy books, I feel like, introduced a strong female lead only for her to be constantly saved by this male. And I feel like that wasn't really the case here. She was very fierce, determined, very fully capable of holding her own. She wasn't a damsel in distress, put it that way. And the tension between her and Caden, my favorite aspect of this book. I loved the sarcastic flirting, the push and pull dynamic, the way he would say things to her, and being so down bad for her. It was everything. And Caden. His declarations. I could open any page of this book and find a quote from him, and let me just read some for you. The first time that they meet, he says, "You don't need to surprise me with nice Knives Angel, I bleed for you if you ask nicely. Not my original plan, but if you feel the need to scream my name during the night, you may do so. I'm not much of a screamer, and I doubt you'll turn me into one. Don't belittle all you've endured for a perception of yourself that someone made you believe you need to be. Caden. Caden. I didn't realize you paid such close attention to me, Elowen says. Caden. What makes you think I've ever looked away? Caden! I'm not done. I'm not done. For you, Elowen, I'll become the worst version of myself. I'm irrevocably lost in you, and that's the only place I want to be. I'll hurt anyone for you, including myself. The only reason why this book is rated so highly is because of Caden. And I really liked another relationship in this book, which was Elowen's friendship with Finian. I think that's how you say his name. It was very well written. Great friendship there. That being said, with all that I love about this book, I definitely expected more of the actual dragons. There wasn't much. And given how central they were to Elowen's motivations for this whole book, I thought we'd see more of them in action, but they felt like they were just there. Like, they just felt like a background element. I get they're probably saved for future books and all that, but I felt like a little bit more of them in this book would have been very beneficial. Even some flashbacks. Now, it's not just the dragons that didn't work for me, okay? Where was the world building in this? Hello, where was the world building? Where was it? The story kept throwing out mentions of like goddesses, priestesses, random little monsters with like no explanation. And it was just like, I felt like I just had to accept them. Like, they're in this world, that's it. I just had to accept them, which it kind of made the world feel very underdeveloped. And just because I feel like fantasy needs more depth and structure, and this book was definitely missing that. And the heist in this book, I think that it wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been. Because what do you mean it's time to flirt when you're infiltrating this enemy? Like, what do you mean you're just flirting? You're just like, no, you're not. You're on a heist. It didn't go for that long either. It was like 2 pages or 1 chapter. I feel like the book should have been separated. Like, I feel like you could have expanded could have ended at the heist. Like, this book could have ended at the heist, and then everything else that happened could have been another book. Like, the tension and the banter and everything was so good. I don't know. It just sometimes felt like this was a romance novel with a random fantasy plot thrown into it, rather than like a fully developed fantasy story with a romance, plot to it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just expected a lot more fantasy than romance. Like, it's definitely a romance book with fantasy elements. Like, it's not a romantasy per se. But overall, I did enjoy this book. But if we're being so for real, the only reason why I love this book so much was because of Caden. He alone was the only thing that was getting me through this book. So would I recommend it? I don't know. Maybe if you're interested in this, if you really like banter, flirtation, and want to see Caden in action, highly recommend it. However, if you are wanting a more stronger fantasy element, I would not recommend this. Also, if you can tell, I'm trying to do longer reviews of books because I feel like I don't do long reviews and I want to. And if you want to see them in written form and more in depth and more eloquently put, follow me on my socials. The next book that I half listened to and half read was Love in Rome by Jenna Lobianco, which is the same author as The Italian Marriage. I gave this one a 3 stars just because the plot of it was a little bit like predictable. It's just a romance, and it's about Stella, who is beautiful, kind, artistic. She's like an art curator, and she's torn between these 2 love interests, which is Vincent, who's like this bad boy photographer, and Marco, who's like the sweet, reliable one who works at this bar. And it's kind of obvious which one she's going to end up with, but that's beside the point. She had a lot of supporting characters which were well written, and I feel like the setting in this book should have been a highlight, but some of the descriptions of Rome lacked the vibrancy and energy that I feel like the city has. The details of the book just kind of felt a little bit generic and reading from a travel guide rather than an actual experience. Even like the sightseeing moments kind of fell flat, and also the pacing of this book was so weird. Like, some events felt rushed while others dragged, and the flow was just uneven, and the insta love wasn't very convincing, and this revenge subplot wasn't convincing either, and it lacked impact and it wasn't explored as much as I feel like it should have been. And yeah, her personality fell a bit flat too. I don't know, I feel like there was like 5 different plots going on in this book at the same time, which was fine, but I just didn't really love it. And again, I really enjoyed listening to the audiobook of this book because it's written in the same way as the first one, where it's a lot of different perspectives in the same chapter and it's not separated. So if you want to give it a go, listen to the audiobook. The audiobook is probably the best way to go about it. And again, there's still those Italian phrases and everything like that in this book, which I really enjoyed reading about. But yeah, I gave it a 3 stars. I wouldn't recommend it, put it that way. Then, because this year I am determined to try and finish as many series that I started last year as possible, hopefully all of them, because there's so many series that I want to start, I decided to read Tough School by Kenna King. Now this is the 7th book out of 9, which is insane, but I read the first 6 books last year in like one sitting and I loved them. They were so good. They're all hockey romances, and you know me and my hockey romances, I love them. I gave this one a 3 star. I did read it on my Kindle, and I really enjoyed, as I mentioned, the earlier books in this series. But this release and the release before it, which was Lucky Score, felt rushed. Like they were just hurriedly thrown together to try and wrap things up and so that she could work on the next series. And the pacing of this book, especially the second half, felt off. And there were so many typos that it made the book feel just rushed and unpolished. But if you are interested, the story follows Reeve, who's a hockey goalie, and Keely, who is like a personal trainer situation. And they meet each other for like an hour, and then something happens where Reeve basically saves her life and gets injured in the process of it. And then because of that, she then becomes his personal trainer in his recovery process, which is like the whole point of this book. But like their whole relationship felt underdeveloped. Reeve finds out about Keely's complicated family situation and just doesn't talk to her about it. And he waits until Thanksgiving to declare his love in front of her whole family, and I just got the ick so badly, and there wasn't much focus on Reeve's recovery, and I expected this to be like a central part of the book. It wasn't, but I mean, like if you're looking for like a nice light and easy read, sure, give it a go, but I don't think I would personally recommend it, and I don't think I loved it as much as I did the first couple of books as well. So because I'm a glutton for punishment, as we all know, I decided to continue reading that series because I was like, you know what? I think I finished that book within like 2 hours. It was so quick, so fast paced that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try and finish the series. I've got 2 books left. I need to finish it. So then I read Perfect Score, which is the next book. And this book is set days before Christmas, where it follows Brent and Zoe. Had like a brief relationship in high school, I think, and there were other circumstances, whatever. But they haven't seen each other in over a decade because they hate each other pretty much. And they end up on the same flight to San Diego, and they both need a date. So Zoe needs a date to make her fiance jealous to her sister's wedding, and Brent needs a date to appease his grandmother's worries about him and his relationships for her birthday. So they're both traveling to San Diego for different reasons. Her for a wedding and him for his grandma's birthday. And they both need a date. So naturally, it leads to a fake dating arrangement, and we all know I love a good fake dating arrangement. And the premise was great. I love a good hockey romance. I love, fake dating. But my biggest issue is Zoe. I did not like her at all. Okay, first of all, she didn't even redeem herself to deserve Brent. She does not deserve him. She spent way too much time obsessing over a man who had made it painfully clear he did not want her. And Brent was too good for her. He was patient. He was kind. He was honestly way more invested in her than she was in him. And his character loved him. Yeah, the pacing felt rushed again. There was a little bit of spelling mistakes. So I gave it 3 stars because, it was still good. I still had a good time, still enjoyed myself. But I feel like these books near the end just felt so rushed. So then I decided to pick up Daydream by Hannah Grace because I was looking for, a published book. Not that there's anything wrong with Kindle books, but I feel like the quality of Kindle books versus a published book is very different. So I love Wildfire and Icebreaker. I love that series so much, especially Wildfire. So I was really excited to read this book. And unfortunately, I was very disappointed. I gave this one 3 stars. I felt like this one fell flat for me compared to Icebreaker and Wildfire. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. It was fine. Basically, the story follows Hallie, who gets dumped by her best/only friend, Will, at the beginning of the book. Okay, that's not a spoiler. And she gets dumped because she basically won't do the deed with him. So she quickly realizes that all of her friends are actually his friends, and determined to do something for herself, she enters a writing competition because she is in love with books. She has her own romance book club, and she enters this competition and wants to write a romance novel. However, she feels like she hasn't experienced any of the things that she wants to write about. So in comes Henry, who is drowning in this academic pressure. He's struggling in class due to his neurodivergence. I think he has ADHD, and his professor's style of teaching isn't helping him. And then as the hockey team's captain, he gets assigned to be, he must keep his grades up. And the stress is getting to him and it's not doing well. So then his friend Aurora, who we know and love from Wildfire, drags him to this bookstore, and obviously it's the one that she works at, and he meets Hallie. And she offers to tutor him because she has experience with people who have ADHD, like her younger sister has it. So she offers to tutor him, and in exchange he agrees to help her gain the experiences for her to write the romance book. So this all sounds really great in theory, but the execution of it was just all vibes. There was no real plot. I really appreciate the focus on the personal struggles and everything, but the romance in this book felt secondary. Like, it felt like this book was just all about the characters. There wasn't any plot or anything at all. The conversations between those two were painful. It was so painful for me. They felt like more therapy sessions than actually having a conversation. There was no emotional connection. I felt like the chemistry was lacking. They spent most of the book too afraid to express their feelings, and then once they got together, they never I still didn't feel the romance. Like, it just felt like a friendship to me. And where was that tutor times job trope? Like, there was barely any tutoring at that. It felt like two people working through their personal struggles with romance added as an afterthought. And I honestly think if you do not connect to Hallie or Henry, this book is going to fall flat for you. Because my friend, she loved this book. She gave it a 5-star and she really connected to Hallie. Whereas I found Hallie to be very frustrating and annoying because I just didn't relate to her, and I didn't relate to Henry either. Yeah, their conversations to me felt exhausting. It felt like Hallie had no character growth because she is a people pleaser, like a chronic people pleaser. And it just felt like she had no growth in that aspect. And there was no third act breakup, which is all well and good, but this whole book felt like a third act breakup to me. So, saying that, it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad book. I just feel like the romance was underwhelming, and if you do not connect to the characters, then it won't be a good book. However, in saying that, if you did enjoy that book, I completely get where you're coming from. But again, I did not connect to the characters, so I did not like it. So the next book that I read is one of my favorite books ever, and I'm pretty sure you can already guess what it is just by the way that I'm talking about it, but it is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. If you have not heard about this book, I can give you a little bit of a plot summary, but I am pretty sure you have read it because this was probably one of the most hyped books last year. Did it come out last year or the year before? 2023. Yeah, I feel like this was one of the most hyped books in 2023. It's my favorite book ever. It's my 3rd time rereading it because the 3rd book in this series came out recently and I wanted to reread them. And I loved it just as much as I did the first time I read it. Basically, if you don't know what this book is about, this book follows Violet, who is the daughter of the high-ranking general who gets ordered to become a dragon rider. And Violet has spent her whole life training to be a scribe. She loves books. Her dad was a scribe, but then her dad unfortunately passes away and her mum forces her to train. She enters this deadly war college called Basgiath, and there are trials and everything like that. It's got dragons. It's got romance. I feel like this book is the perfect book as well for an introductory to fantasy because it is definitely a romantasy, and I feel like the world building isn't too complex to where you couldn't understand it. Yeah, there's the romance. Let's just say this is my favorite person ever in this book. Favorite male main character ever. I love him to bits and I would do anything for him. is all I'm saying. He's everything. He's just everything. And I will probably start crying if I think about it too much. So I highly recommend this book. It is a 5 stars. Every single time I've read it, it has been a 5 stars. I don't think anything could change my opinion. I think it's popular for a reason. Do I think the hype was very overhyped? Yes, of course. I don't think a book has ever become hyped to that scale, but this is utter perfection to me. Highly recommend if you haven't given it a read. After reading Fourth Wing, I was like, right, I kind of felt a little bit slumpy, so I was like, I don't want to go into Iron Flame feeling slumpy, and I need a quick pass book. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try and finish a series. So then I picked up Wrong Score, which is the last book in that Hawkeye's Hockey series by Kenna King. And I gave this book a 3 star. It is an age gap romance, I will preface it. There was one quote which I loved, which is this quote here, which reads, "Promise me," he says, his voice low, "that you'll tell me before you stop knitting, before you stop singing while you do the dishes. Tell me before you pack your things and leave the divorce papers on the kitchen table." His breath hitches and his eyes lock on mine, "because you're the only thing I'd give everything to keep." Very sweet. So I really enjoyed this book. Overall, wasn't perfect, you know. The story is centered around Rowan, who is a reporter who's stuck writing this report about the Hawkeye's hockey team. She is a sports writer, and she would much rather be writing about art, but, you know, her life has led her down this path. And then as she spends more time around the team, she gets to know the grumpy coach Bexley, and he was once a player who now coaches the team, and he lives and breathes hockey. And when he sees Rowan, who's a sports reporter, he gets a little bit like, what are you doing here? Like very grumpy, very like, I don't want you distracting my players, you're distracting them, like has something against her basically because of a personal experience he's had. That being said, the banter between them was really good. I liked the tension, the witty comebacks, the gruff exterior hiding his protectiveness, and the push and pull between the characters made sense. That was good. However, the story felt rushed, especially towards the end. A lot of it was very predictable. I think I predicted most of this book. Also found it hard to ignore the amount of spelling mistakes and errors in this book. Especially there was this huge section of paragraph that was repeated literally 3 lines down, and it just made it confusing, and it just didn't feel like it was polished and it was just the book to get the whole series done. Like that's just what it felt like. Despite that, you know, it was still a good book. Would I recommend it? Probably not. I don't like age gap romances. This was an 18-year age gap as well, so I don't know, didn't really enjoy it. I did give it a 3 stars. It was entertaining, and that's literally all that I can say about it. And then finally, the last book that I read was Chasing the Puck by Alyssa Lemaire. I read this on my Kindle and I gave it a 3 stars. And I just want to preface this in saying I love women. Okay, I love women. I love girls. I'm a girl's girl. Love them all. Remember that as I go through my review of this book, because I was loving Chasing the Puck in the beginning. The chemistry between Olivia, who's this drama major with major Broadway dreams, and Tuck McCoy, who's this cocky, very charming player, was great. Love them both. The story basically follows them as they navigate through this path, and basically this is the second book in this series, and the first book was about his best friend, who's this very grumpy goalie, and the female main character's best friend as well. And Olivia has had this past experience with her ex, who was a jerk, who was a hockey player and rich. So she sees Tuck and she's like, I hate all hockey players and you're basically my ex in another form, which is fine. That is fine. But Tuck, he was pining after her. He was literally watching these boring artsy movies for her. He was doing everything in his power for her. And this girl, her trust issues and boundaries, don't even get me started. I get it. She had a past with her ex and she has trust issues because of that. I get that. But girl, she needed therapy. That girl needed therapy because she let those trust issues get in the way of what could have been great. It drove me crazy. Like, Tuck was literally obsessed with her in the best way possible, was doing so much for her, and all she did was push him away constantly. Like, I can't actually, oh my god, there was times I just wanted to shake her and scream at her because he was constantly supporting her, believing her, taking care of her when she was sick, loved her unconditionally, basically. It was just so cute, and she was infuriating. Like, Oh my god, there was a scene with her ex and she was embarrassed and stormed down on him and said he was embarrassing, and she said all these hateful things to him, and it just didn't sit right with me. I did not like her one bit. She was, oh my god, she just pissed me off so much. Tuck just deserves so much better than her, and I hate the way that her character was. He was too good for her, and I found myself really frustrated with Olivia because she just... it was not good. It was not good. So in the end, I gave it 3 stars only because of Tuck. That's literally the only reason I gave it, because he's a total gem. He made me swoon. His actions were amazing. But yeah, would I recommend it? Probably not, unless you want to see Tuck. Let's just say if it wasn't for him, this book would have received a much, much lower rating. But yeah, those are all the books that I read. This is a little bit of a longer video. As I mentioned, I'm trying to do more in-depth reviews and trying to really give you guys a better understanding of what the book is about. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you like these longer style of reviews. If you don't, just let me know, because I'm quite happy to not do these style of reviews. And as always, these reviews are always posted on my Goodreads and Fable. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Go watch my TBR video for Feb if you want to know what books I'm going to be reading throughout this month. Anyways, that is all. I've yapped for too long, and I'm really hoping that all of that made sense, because it probably didn't. Okay, bye!